for tuning in again. I'm Richard at Yesterday's Machinery, and here we have the engine that we're going to check up today and hopefully get a first start off. We're going to shake it up a little before we start it because it has some issues. It seems just fine, but the previous owner, he bought it back in 1989 and he has just started once, and when he did, it did a little runway, so I think there is some issue with the fuel system, maybe with the check valve or the governor springs are tightened too bad. So it revved up and he had trouble to get it stuck again. So we will check that before start. And this is an engine that is made in Sweden, Småland, in Målilla engine factory back in 1939. So it is quite old. I checked with Målilla and they still got the papers for it, and it is delivered the 17th of August back in 1939, so just some weeks before the war. And that's a little bit interesting, because when the war came, the engine factory almost died because no one can afford an engine like this, and you couldn't get fuel for it, and oils, everything was restricted back then. So it is a little bit funny that it is so late, and the original shape on it is awesome, that's why I bought it. I only collect engines with the original stand, not repainted, and this is the original paint. And this, I don't know why, but he has started to paint it orange. This cover here and this one, it is, yeah, if an orange were longer, this is how it should look. But that's a later problem, I think. I think we're gonna get it running to start with, and then we can try to get the paint off. So that's a little bit of the engine history. So I think let's check the fuel system first. And then I will explain a little bit more when working on the engine how it works and the internal parts and so on. So yeah, let's go from there. It's all covered up with sawdust and other junk, so I'm just gonna blow it off real quick. So I think we're gonna start with removing this air intake. It is a reed valve in here, a leather reed valve, and then we will check the bearings, see if they are any good. Here you can see the reed valve, that is just a piece of leather with a steel spring on it. When it gets under pressure in the crankcase, it lifts this up and air gets sucked in here. And when it gets pressurized, the leather pushes here instead and create a tight seal so the air can be compressed into the cylinder instead. And I think it looks nice. I don't think we have to do anything with this really. Looks very good. Yeah, I think I got it now. It's all zeroed up and it's standing okay. This is not the best way to do this. I think it is many better ways. This is not so scientific, but it is alright. This kind of Babbitt bearings says in the owner's manual that you should be able to push it sideways a little bit, but it should really not have any clearance at this way. So now we have an oil film in the bearing as well, so I will take my bearing clearance plier here, very scientific, and just get a good grip here and push the bearing back and forth and see if we have any readouts on the bearing gauge here. We should have a little bit is good, but not too much. So yeah, let's just check it. Yeah, we have a little bit here. Okay, so that is not much at all. I think the bearing size is around 80 millimeters for this one. And this is 0.06 millimeters of play. And we have to calculate that we have an oil film, so the play is a little bit bigger, but Yeah, I'm very happy with the result here, and this bearing will be just fine. So we're not gonna tear this down anymore, we're just gonna leave it like it is. So the main bearings are roller bearings, and they have no lubrication at all. They should just get a little drop of oil while the crankshaft is spinning, so it collects oil and just splash up. And this is a two-stroke engine, so there shouldn't really be any oil in the crankcase. It is a little pool here of oil, but that's alright. And the piston on this engine is 200 millimeters in bore. I don't know the stroke, but we can calculate that also, so we know how many liters the engine is in. Here you have the oil supply for the engine. This is the lubricator, and I think it contains around 1 liter, but that will run a long time. Here you have a level glass, the oil level is here, and here you have control glasses, because you can work this pump manually while turning this little handle here. And then, as we see here, we should see oil drip down, and that oil goes in this copper lines. One goes here, loops the cylinder and piston, and it also is a drilled hole in the piston, so the oil can drip down to the piston pin and lubricates it. And then we also have this copper pipe that goes here, down. Here is actually damage on those two pipes, but we will fix that later on. And that pipe goes here and in there. And if you check here in the crankcase again, you can see a little disc mounted here on the crank, and the oil nozzle from that oil copper pipe is going into the crankcase and drips oil into this disc. And while the engine is running, the centrifugal force pushes the oil into a channel in the crank here that goes in here and to the bearing. That's how the rod bearing gets its oil. And here you have an eccentric hub, because when the engine is running, this moves back and forth like this. And when it does, it runs both the water pump. It is just a piston, 2 check valves. So that is the water pump, and you can see it working when I turn the engine. So it just pumps water in here, into the cylinder, and out. This little shaft here is attached to this shaft. So while the engine is running, this moves very fast, and this handle spins around and feeds oil into the engine. So this engine is supposed to run equipment that uses a flat belt, and this is actually a friction clutch, because when the engine is running you can put the belt on, this spins freely, and then when you want to start the machine you push this in, and then you have this little handle here, pushes in and squeeze this little brake drum here, and this starts to spin in the same speed that flywheel. So it's pretty clever, works very good. So it is a little bit hard to see on this side, but here you have an eccentric as well on a crankshaft that spins along with the engine, and this eccentric works the fuel pump. So here is the governor. This is a centrifugal working governor, so you have 2 weights that is spring loaded, and if you feel here on the springs, they are very tight, so I'm gonna undo them a little, because it's better for the engine to run a bit slower than a bit fast. When it runs, the centrifugal weights go out, and that changes how long the distance on the eccentric is working. This is turning. You can't see it when it's running, but it does. So if the engine spins too fast, it turns, so the eccentric motion gets a little bit smaller, and if it's too slow, it turns this the other way, so that eccentric motion gets bigger, and that makes the stroke longer for the fuel pump and injects more fuel, the engine revs up, and that's how it works. Here you have the fuel pump, and this is very straightforward. You have one lever here, so you can manually pump in fuel into the cylinder. You have the fuel line going in here from the tank. You have a check valve here. The piston and pumping cylinder is in here, about so long. And here we have another check valve, a bleeding valve. That is good. So the pump seems to work. I'm not gonna tear this pump down, I think, because it works, so we're gonna start the engine. If this doesn't work, it just stops. And the check valve seems to work as well, because if they don't, it shouldn't pump out diesel here. So I think we will leave this, and it feels to be in very good shape as well. You can feel a little bit of resistance in the injector when you pump it, so I think that's good. And here is an interesting valve, because when the engine is running, you should open this, and combustion pressure goes into this line and down here to this pressure vessel, and you fill this up with around 15 bars of pressure. Then you can use it next time you're going to start the engine, because this engine has a pre-mounted stationary blowtorch that runs on diesel from the fuel tank. But now for the first start we're going to use a regular blowtorch to heat this up, because this is what goes into the cylinder head and acts kind of like a glow plug. This is 1 inch wide, goes in and glows also inside, so that's what starts the engine. And while the engine is running, we don't need this at all. It maintains the heat all by itself. So I think we're going to start with removing this pipe here, because there is a damage further down. So we're going to remove it and solder it up. Here we can see the damage. I think we can chop it off here and here and put a bigger pipe over the old one and solder it up. I think the soldering went well, looks good, feels strong. The pipe is free. I run some compressed air through it, so it should be clean, ready to go. So let's mount it. So I think I'm gonna drain the old oil out from the lubricator. I don't know anything about that oil, and it might be some water in, I don't know. So I made this little paper slide here for the oil to get in this canister. So let's drain it out. I think I will fill it up with a little bit of diesel first and drain the diesel out as well. See if we can get some more of this gunk out of this. There's a nice little filter, seems clean. Oops. So let's fill it up with some fresh oil instead. Yeah, right to the top. Perfect. want new grease. New fresh grease. Here we should have grease as well. Here is a small oil container that lubricates the bearing here at the excenter. This should be filled with straight oil. Another one on this side. And this is just a small container with a bit of yarn in the hole that prevents too much oil of dripping down. It's pretty clever, easy, but works. Then I'm also gonna take a little bit of oil and put right into the centrifugal disc here so that the rod bearing gets oil just when we start it. Then I'm gonna put the reed valve back on. Oil on the threads here. Yeah, so now the clutch works as it should. So here you can see the governor spring. I have released the tension on it quite a bit because it was very tight from the beginning. So yep, and I think that it's better that the engine runs slower than too fast. So I think this will be good. We will see. Now, when we are going to start the engine with this blow torch, I need something for it to stand on, so I think I just can clamp this down, get it standing, something like this maybe. I will try. I'm very happy with how it runs. Sounds great. No mysterious noises from inside the engine whatsoever. Runs perfect. I did open this valve, so I was filling up the pressure vessel down there, and it worked perfect, it seems. I didn't fill it up all the way. Around 4 bars. Here we can see it. So now when the pressure vessel has at least 4 bars, better than nothing, but I think we will get up to 10 bars before this burner burns the way it should. And yeah, but anyway, I want to test it, see if it works. So diesel first, then air. Look at that! So that burner also works, as it should. That's well spent money, I think. Close all the air valves here, so we have some air till next time we're going to start it. So I'm gonna check the bearing here, if it's warm or not. Should be cold, rather cold at least. Very much oil, that's a good thing. So we get a lot of oil lubrication to the bearing, and the bearing itself is cold like a winter morning. Perfect. So please spare 1 extra minute of your life and listen to this, because the most difficult task at my channel is to find new objects. Like this engine, I paid $3,000 for it. Not cheap, but anyway, I have to make interesting videos for you guys, because I can't bring my Toyota in and swap the brakes. Nobody wants to see it. But I think these kind of videos are quite nice. I like making them and so on. So if you really want to help my channel out, please subscribe to it and like this video if you find it interesting, and share it with your friends if you can, if they are interested. So that's what really helps me out, and that you guys watch my videos. And yeah, I think that's it. Have a great day. Until next time, I see you. Thanks.